Hey Connection Club members, we've got Pretzel here and I wanted to show you real life in real time doing the approach and retreat version of the boomerang game, because Pretzel is not very good about me being on her right side. You guys are going to see that in a second. And so I wanted to show you how I'm working on touches. So Pretzel is a 7-year-old Mustang from Devil's Garden, California. And you can see she's doing really well on that left side. But the right side is a totally different story. You guys are going to see that in this video here. So when we are trying to get a horse gentled on being touched, we want to start where the horse is most comfortable. And whether you have a wild horse or you have a domesticated horse, the same is true for that. So in her case, she was most comfortable on the left side. So I started the touching process on her left shoulder where she was most comfortable. And from there started to work my way to be able to touch those legs, down her hip, all of those places, and then working forward to being able to touch the front of her face like I am here. And then now what I'm wanting to work on is trying to get onto that right side of her body. And so even though this is a horse that was wild, and you might be thinking like this doesn't apply to me, it can still be very relevant, because I'm going to show you how you can use that approach and retreat method, that boomerang game of going to comfort, going into zones where the horse is not comfortable, and returning to comfort as a way to build your horse's confidence and allowing them to touch you in more places. So here I'm starting on the front of her face where she's most comfortable now, and then I'm starting to put my hand on the right side of her body. I'm still leaving my own body towards the front of her because I'm trying not to overwhelm her by trying to stand on her right side and touch on her right side. So I'm just repositioning myself a little bit, and you can see I'm just starting to put my right hand on the right side of her face just a little bit. And she's standing like that because she's looking at me out of her right eye, and she's finding that a little bit overwhelming. So I'm just focusing on breathing, making sure that my posture is pretty neutral, relaxing my leg and trying not to overwhelm her at all. And Pretzel is a 7-year-old Devil's Garden Mustang from California. She is one of my Mustangs for the Pennsylvania Tip Challenge, and this is pretty exciting stuff because we're just working on these real basics here, trying to get her comfortable with these both sides. And so now that I can actually lead her around with the rope, I can touch her all over on that left side, it's time to start training this right side. And the interesting thing about horses is they can be quite literally very tame on one side and pretty much wild on the other side. And that's exactly what we're seeing with Pretzel here. And with her, the reason why we call her Pretzel is because she will literally pretzel her body. She turns her body to try to look at me out of the left eye while I'm standing on her right side. And we also thought Pretzel is a super cute name, and she gives off very calm, future lesson pony vibes or little kid's horse, because she does react very calmly. Even though she's still a Mustang and she's a bit jumpy and nervous at things, she's pretty calm and gives off very well thought out vibes. And so we think that maybe one day she'll be a future lesson horse or little kid's horse, and Pretzel is a super cute name for that. So here I'm going to show you guys, I'm speeding up some of the footage so that way it's not a ridiculously long video, and then I'll slow down other parts where you can see pretty well. So like this is a section where you can see pretty well, and I'm starting with touching on that head. So you're always going to start by touching where the horse is most comfortable. So if you're trying to pick up a horse's leg but they're being fidgety, you might start higher up on the leg, touching on the horse's shoulder or the top of their hip and rubbing that area. As you're there, you then start to slowly move towards the area where the horse is uncomfortable, and you just keep rubbing. You want it to feel really natural for the horse. You don't want to move your hand stiff and slowly or just hold it awkwardly there, because the horse might think that you're applying pressure and wanting the horse to move. So you're just rubbing. Rubbing is the universal signal for stand still. So I start by rubbing on that front of her face where she's most comfortable, and then I'm starting to bring my hand down to the side. Now there are a lot of little things to keep in mind as we're doing this approach and retreat kind of process. You're starting where the horse is most comfortable. You're slowly working your way into the zone or the area where the horse is uncomfortable. And when you get to that area, you want to hold it just long enough that the horse is like, okay, I'm not going anywhere. And then you want to yes and reward. Now by yesing and rewarding and even moving away, in my case, I'm walking away to the bucket of grass to go get her her grass for a reward. She also gets a big release in pressure when I walk away, and it gives her an opportunity to breathe and just think a little bit before I just continue on. If you don't give your horse a big enough release, then what can happen is you'll actually condition your horse to become more anxious, because there's no opportunity for them to settle and just think through things. So you want to allow for a big release or a longer release and really give your horse time to process. It's kind of like, just imagine if you were really overwhelmed by something and really upset by something, and somebody just kept pushing you and pushing you and pushing you and pushing you, and we're going to try again and try again and try again. You might just snap. And that can definitely happen with horses as well. So ideally, what you're going to do is start to rub where your horse is comfortable, start to move towards whether it's their ears or their legs or anything like that, where they're uncomfortable. And then just hold for a little bit. And then you can either walk away, step away, offer a cookie and step away, and allow them to just breathe. Be like, okay, that wasn't so bad. We can do it again. And then you can continue on and go again. If you just stay beside your horse and you continue working at it, chances are they're just going to say, like, this is too much, too fast, and they're going to get overwhelmed and try to leave. And that might happen a couple times anyways. Like working with this Mustang here, there's going to be a couple moments where she does start to back up or want to get away and things like that. And when that happens, it's not the end of the world. You're just going to bring the horse forward again, back to the spot where they were standing. So you just return them to the spot. You want to clarify for them where they're supposed to stand and just gently start over again. What we want to be careful not to do is take an attitude of, oh, this is really scary for my horse, I'm just not going to do it. Because then what happens is it will stay really scary for your horse, and your horse isn't going to make progress on that. And just think of it kind of like let's say you have a child that's scared of going to school. We want to really help that child feel confident at school. And so instead of saying, okay, we'll never send you to school, it'd be better to say, hey, like, let's go to school, but let's just go slowly. Let's just walk a few steps towards the front door, breathe. Okay, now let's try walking into the school. Okay, let's try now checking out your classroom. And so you just go really sequential for them, one step at a time. So they're not having to take everything in all at the same time, which can be very overwhelming. So you want them to have that opportunity. You can see she's doing a really good job of pretzeling there. She's turning a lot. She's doing really well though. So I'm starting with getting onto that neck a little bit more now, so I'm touching on the side of her. I'm still standing more towards the front of her, and that's to allow her to not feel super overwhelmed by me. And I'm starting to reach out and touch towards that neck. So you can see I'm reaching down, touching that neck. I'm going to hold it for a little bit, and then I'm going to offer her some positive reinforcement. But I want to make sure that she's not pulling backwards on me as I go to do that. I just want to stand on that side just for a little bit. And of course, as we start to figure out what it is that we're trying to achieve and she understands what the goal is, I want to make enough progress for her to get that yes and that grass, so that way she's not just getting grass for the same thing over and over again. Kind of like how when you're in kindergarten, you get a gold star for knowing where your name is, but by the time you get to the next grade, you're going to have to learn how to spell your name, and the next grade you're going to have to spell a whole sentence, and the bar just keeps getting raised and raised and raised. You're expected to know more and more things to earn those rewards. And so the same thing's happening here, is you're no longer going to get grass from me touching your face, because I know you're good at me touching your face. Now the reward has to come from touching further down on your neck. And you can see she's still trying to turn a little bit her head to look at me out of the left eye, but because my body's so close to her, it's blocking her a little bit, but she so badly wants to look at me out of that left eye. And sometimes people say, well, you should get her eyes checked, maybe something's wrong with her eyes. And sure, like maybe something is, but a lot of the times it's just an issue of the horse getting trained on one side, and the horse doesn't have the same crossover in their brains that we do, where we can see things out of both eyes and we recognize them as the same object. Horses are not quite the same way. Each side of their body essentially needs to be trained on whatever object it is to understand what it's supposed to be and how that's supposed to go. So now you can see we're making some really good progress there, where we're starting to get down towards that shoulder area on the other side. And the interesting thing about how this process works is as we make progress touching to a new area, the old comfort zone no longer, you don't always have to retreat as far back. So now, in the beginning, we were starting by touching her face at the front of her forehead and working our way down the neck. Now, as she gets more and more comfortable, maybe the higher part on her neck will become the new comfort zone of where I need to go to help her feel comfortable. So I'm still touching her on her forehead here, and then I'm able to get onto her neck pretty quickly there, which is great. And then now I'm starting to touch a little bit more onto her shoulder area and going a little bit further down her body. I'm holding it for a little bit longer before I'm going to offer that reward. And while I'm there, I'm just rubbing gently, I'm breathing, and then I'm going to yes and reward. The fact that she's not always chewing when I'm on that side of her body lets you know that she's tight and thinking about it. But this time, see how now she's chewing the grass? So that's telling me that she's getting more relaxed, because the time before that I was touching her neck, she was just holding the grass in her mouth. This time she was chewing and kind of continuously eating. So I'm going to speed up some of the footage again here so you can see as we're making that progress. I'm still touching her forehead and then running my hand down that side. Want to try to build up that confidence. And there you go. See how that was my first time now where I didn't touch her forehead first. I just went right to her neck. And that's just kind of showing you that progression of once you progress far enough with that touching, you no longer have to go back to the same comfort area, because now she's pretty comfortable on that neck. So there she got a little overwhelmed. I'm not sure if it's because the other horse came up beside on the other side of the fence, plus with me on that side of the fence, it could have just been a little overwhelming. But again, no big deal. There's going to be no punishment, no yanking on her or anything like that. That will just make everything a lot worse, add more emotion and anxiety to the situation. So what I want to do is just bring her forward again, just start over, it's no big deal, and then just continue rubbing. And now you can see I'm starting to work my way into other areas. So here now I'm starting to go towards her leg, which she found overwhelming, and she shot forward. So again, no big deal. We're going to bring her back around, and then we'll try to work on touching lower again. And going down all the way down her leg is definitely an ambitious feat for her, just finally getting on this right side and touching her. So I don't need to push my luck and go all the way down and have that goal of all the way down her legs. Although I think if I had enough time, there'd be no harm in trying to have that as a goal, because if you're just doing positive reinforcement and you're doing it slowly like this and just sequentially, if I had lots of time, I could do more. But I've got lots of things to do in the day, so I find that I make lots of progress if I just make some significant progress like this, where we weren't able to touch that right side at all. Now I'm able to go on that right side and touch her. That this is really a great thing to have, and then we can move forward from there the next session. So what happened here is I went to touch her without touching her forehead first, and she got a little jumpy again and she started to move around. So what did I do? You saw I was like, okay, I'll just go back to touching your forehead again, and then we'll work our way down. And the worst thing that happens for her, the only consequence, is that she just didn't earn her grass until I was able to touch on that neck again and be able to repeat that process. So I moved her back up into view here so you can see her a little bit better again. And I'm just working on touching around that wither area and that shoulder area, and just trying to get things on a better note, because the last time I went towards her leg, she scooted forward. And so now I'm trying to get that back again. And same thing here, I went to her neck again. So when she got overwhelmed, I went to her forehead again, settled her, went down to her neck again, and then we just try again. So we start on that neck. Sometimes people feel defeated and they can feel frustrated, and they'll just repeat the same thing over and over again for the sake of avoiding a bit of a misunderstanding. But it's really important that you try to repeat the things, making them easier if you can, but otherwise repeating whatever it is that you're trying to do with your horse. So in my case, it was trying to touch her neck without touching her forehead first. So I went back to that again after needing to touch her forehead. So it's a bit of a juggling effect. We were touching the forehead always first, then I started touching just the neck first, then she had a moment where she got overwhelmed, so I went back to touching the forehead, and then pretty quickly I advanced again to just going straight to that neck and touching that neck. And you can see I'm running my hand slowly down her shoulder a little bit there, and I'm just trying to build her confidence, just doing that approach and retreat of coming down towards the area that's uncomfortable, doing a little bit of rubbing, and then coming back up again, because I want to make sure that I don't leave her on a bad note, on the sense of that I went down her shoulder and then had her spook and run away. So I'm trying to just be able to come down a little bit lower with my hand, so that way we end on a really good note that way. And then after working all on this right side a whole bunch, what I want to do to finish is I want to be able to switch sides. So here I'm on that left side again, which is her comfortable area. I want to make sure that side's still really good and that she's not having a lot of anxiety there. And then I'll practice switching sides and going to that right side. So trying to get into that right-left brain, make sure she knows that I can touch her from both sides, and it's not just because we've built up this tolerance of me being on the right side. I want to be able to switch and go from one side to the other. And this was our first session really working on this task. So hopefully you guys enjoyed getting to see this from start to finish, of being able to do our first ever touches on that right side. Thanks, guys.